Welcome to the Living Free podcast with Ahna, myself, your host. This is a podcast where I talk about all things wellness, all things spirituality, faith, Christianity, mental health, you name it, personal development. And really, the goal of this podcast is to show you how you too can achieve freedom in your body and your spirit. And when I say freedom and when I say living free, I mean living free of fear, living free of societal expectations, living free of what other people think of you. And, so that you can live out the life of your dreams. And I believe that that's possible for everyone. It's just that sometimes we feel restricted, and that's really the case of us restricting ourselves. And so I want to show you and talk about all of the tools that have helped me achieve freedom in my own body. How did I get free of pain? How did I get free of depression? How did I achieve freedom in, from constant people pleasing? And the list could go on. And this is a podcast where I hope to bring all of that together to show you that it's possible to live out your destiny and God's will for your life. And that even when no one else understands what you're doing, how you're living, why you're doing it, if you follow the call of your heart and you follow the call that God is leading you towards, you will achieve the life of your dreams. And so today I want to talk about a really vulnerable topic for me. And that is the topic of divorce and relationship endings. And I want to speak about this because I think in many communities there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of judgment around this topic. And, for a very long time, it really impacted me. And in fact, it's something that I would say every single day, there's still a part of me that's still working through that. Shame has been one of the number one shadows I've struggled with my entire life. And when it comes to the topic of divorce, I do want to speak about this, even though it is a vulnerable topic and not one that I was really planning on sharing a ton about, but I've felt really called to. What I've come to realize and understand about divorce is that endings to certain relationships in your life are actually all a part of God's plan. And divorce is not, it's not a failure. It's not a mark of being ungodly. And in fact, it's typically a really, really sacred part of your life's path to help you evolve. And there's no shame in that. And it is very true, like this sounds cliche, but it is very true that certain relationships enter our lives for specific reasons, for specific seasons. It's not always a lifetime. And each connection teaches us something essential about ourselves. And also teaches us something essential about our capacity to love and about our boundaries and so much more. And so I want to talk about all of that because I went through my own divorce in the past few years, and I do see that this is happening for more and more couples. And so I just want to shed some light on a topic that is kind of hard to talk about. And the other thing I'll say about it is that God's plan for your life isn't about keeping us in situations that stunt our growth, that harm our spirit, or that prevent us from stepping into our full calling. And so when a marriage ends or when a long relationship ends, it can be a really deep invitation from God to heal or to reclaim your power or to align more fully with the life that's truly meant for you. And in fact, I think it's often something, and some people will disagree with this, but this is really truly what I believe and know to be true, is that we you and your spouse, or you and your ex-spouse, you agree to these things along. You agreed to the divorce, all of that, long before coming to Earth. Typically, a planned heartbreak to help your soul evolve, and ultimately, in the end, help you achieve the life of your dreams and remember who you really are. Remember your divinity. And divorce is a chance to honor your own needs and trust that God's plan for you is bigger than any circumstance that we run into here on Earth. And actually, sometimes the most loving thing that you can do for the ones that you love is walk away, which is really hard. And ending a relationship doesn't mean turning away from God. It can actually mean stepping into a deeper trust with Him. And that is actually often the point. And so, regarding divorce, this is not, I haven't shared a lot about my story because it's been a very sacred, private part of my journey and will continue to be that. But I do want to share a few things briefly because I think that there's a lot of beautiful learnings that I've come to learn and understand that I think will help many of you listening that may be in a relationship that doesn't feel aligned for you anymore. Or if you have been grappling with the idea of, is it right to stay? Is it right to leave? Like, what is the right thing? I think that some of what I might share today can help other people, and that is my purpose for sharing it. And so I'll share, I personally went through my own divorce in the past 2 years. I left my absolute best friend and high school sweetheart of 15 years. We were together 15 years, and it was the hardest thing I had ever done in my entire, and through a lot of things. Yet that was the most heart-wrenching. And as a lot of my childhood trauma surfaced 3 years ago, it really had me questioning everything about myself and the life that I built. And, as I was on my own healing journey, we simply ended up drifting apart. And my intuition would tell me, it's time to go on your own. It's time to go on your own. And, I ignored it. I ignored it for a long time until the whispers became like screams in my head and in my heart, where it was like far too hard to ignore. And I think maybe some of you listening may resonate with that, maybe not even on a relationship level, but with certain things, right? Like when there's something that our heart is guiding us towards and we continue to shut it down, that doesn't solve the problem. It often makes it louder. And I knew over time that I needed to leave. And what many may not understand is that, I actually didn't leave the relationship because I didn't love him anymore. That's not why I left. And again, I think many people listening may not understand that. And in fact, many people around me didn't understand that either. But why I left was because I knew there was more love for me to discover in myself. I did not know who I was. And I only knew the Ahna that lived in survival, the Ahna that wasn't healed. And I was, super confused about my identity. And, I only knew the Ahna that didn't love herself at all. And there was just, so I didn't leave because the love left. I left because I knew there was more to discover in me and that I couldn't do that without leaving. And, the Ahna before, she sought love, she sought acceptance, she sought appreciation, she sought everything external. And I knew that I needed to leave in order to discover more about myself, really. That's as simple as that. And the decision to leave my ex was not only because he was my best, it wasn't difficult because there were so many reasons it was difficult, but it was not only difficult because he was my best friend and because I still loved him, but also because no one around me understood why I would do such a thing. And there were many learnings and lessons on following my own heart and my own path, despite being completely misunderstood by everyone around me. And at the time, although it was hard, looking back, I'm really proud of myself. It was a big step in me developing a better relationship with myself and trusting myself again. After years of solely doing things to please everyone around me and keep the peace around me. And so I knew that in order to heal myself and really live out the life that God had planned for me, I had to leave. And even though it was going to hurt, so many people in the process. And at the same time, I kept hearing God whispering, like, this has always been a part of the plan. And I knew that the most loving thing that I could do for myself, but also for my ex-partner and his growth as well, was to leave. And I want to just say to anyone listening, it takes an immense amount of courage to follow your heart. And following your heart in this life often comes with a lot of painful endings. But that is the path of the soul. And the point of life is character development. And we're all here teaching each other. We're teaching each other lessons all the time, and we're walking each other back home. As unfortunate as it is sometimes, the suffering, like, it's the pain, it's the painful lessons that actually all bring us back to a place of self-love, that help us remember our divinity and actually ultimately help us remember that we cannot get through this life without God. We cannot get through this life without God. And, with all of that being said, I want to share some major learnings from my divorce that I hope can help other men and women that have, maybe are in a similar situation, that have been in a similar situation, and you're still grappling with, with grief and shame and all of that. I hope this helps because it is painful. It's one of the most painful things you'll go through in this life, which is also why it's one of the most transformative. And it's also a terribly hard decision to make when you're in the middle of it. And so I wanted to share some major lessons that I've pulled from just the past 2 years of really going through this process myself. And the biggest lesson I want to share is that, or learning, I should say, is that you will never stop loving someone you were once deeply in love with. Love never goes away. And even after years of being separated from a previous partner, you could still be missing certain parts of them or the relationship. And in fact, you will have parts of you that feel like you still love them. And it's because you do still love them. And that is okay. And in fact, you can even be in a relationship with someone else and still have love for your previous partner. You're just not in love with them anymore. And that is also okay and quite normal. And in fact, talking about that with your current partner is what is going to help you open your heart and become even closer to your current beloved. And so, so often we feel like the love must be completely gone for a relationship to be over, or we feel like once the relationship is over, there should be no more love for that person. And that's just not how love works. And in fact, when you love someone, that will never leave you. And I remember, gosh, sometimes my heart would just be hurting so much. and the grief would feel so deep in my heart. And I would just beg God, like, what is it going to take for me to not feel this like heart-wrenching pain? Like, and, and God ended up pressing upon my heart that, like, even when a relationship is over, the love doesn't go away, and it's not supposed to. And it's something I remember I would ask healers to do for me was like, I was like, please cut whatever cord. Like I can feel a cord like attaching me, like it's painful. And I would like ask them to cut cords. I would just like do anything to try to like, I thought I was missing something, if that makes sense. Like I thought I was missing something because there was so much love still in my heart. What I want to share is like love is not a contract, it's not a circumstance, it's an energy, and it imprints your heart and your soul. And even when a relationship ends, the bond that you shared leaves a lasting mark. Even if you know that you're not supposed to be with that person anymore in a romantic way, it's still okay to love them because you did love them. And that's what I want to really emphasize, is that your grief is just showing your capacity to feel deeply, to connect fully. It's and I want to kind of talk about grief and really what that's taught me as well. But yeah, the biggest lesson for me was that like love never leaves. And when I was able to fully accept that, it made it a lot harder, or made it a lot easier. I used to make it really hard on myself, but it made it a lot easier to just accept and move through sadness, and not feel like guilt around this topic. And so the second lesson I want to talk about is, what I learned is that grief is really showing you your capacity for love. Grief is just love that doesn't know where to go. It doesn't have an outlet anymore. And grief is a teacher I've spent a lot of time with over the past year for so many reasons. Grief over my childhood, the things I experienced as a young girl, over my divorce. To be honest with you, my grief is still existent. And I will tell you, yesterday I probably cried 4 times. I'm still working through a lot of grief. And what I will say is like grief can hit you out of nowhere, but it is necessary to feel it. Grief it's proof of our soul's ability to love, like the true depth of love that we feel. And when we lose someone or something that was important to us, whether by our own choice or by an unfortunate circumstance, whether it's death or separation, or the intensity of that sadness reflects how fully we opened our heart to that person, to love. It's truly showing you just how much you opened your heart. We are love. And every circumstance here is pointing you back to love. And what I learned is that grief is a teacher, and it illuminates our capacity to love. It reminds us that even in loss, our hearts are capable of connection. It's not something that leaves. This life is full of change, and change can be difficult. And whether that change is by choice, whether it's by circumstance that wasn't your choice, whatever it may be, like we all feel grief. And again, grief is just showing us our heart's capacity to love. And it's taught me a lot. And I think it's important to note too that you could be separated from someone for many years and know you're not supposed to be with them and still be grieving them. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's necessary to feel it. It's necessary to allow those feelings when it's when we don't allow those feelings that we literally become physically sick. I just want to, in the Bible, Jesus talks about blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And Jesus is honoring the sacredness of grief. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of failure. It's not a sign that you did something wrong, that you should have made a different decision. Not at all. It's just a profound expression of our ability to feel deeply. And we as humans on earth are here to feel deeply. And grief softens you. It humbles you. It creates space also for you to lean on God and to receive God's love and God's restoration for your life more fully and his wisdom. So that's grief, that's love. And the third learning that divorce taught me about was that just because nothing is technically wrong in a relationship, it doesn't mean that it's right. And even though you still love someone, it doesn't mean you're still meant to stay together. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and the other person is end the relationship. And now I might get some backlash on this, but that's okay. But this is really truly what I believe. And I think that many people feel there needs to be something major that happens in a relationship or a marriage that warrants the relationship ending, like abuse or cheating or something drastic. And I want to offer a very different perspective that there doesn't need to be anything wrong in order for the relationship not to be, right for you anymore. And in fact, this was the case for me. And this is what I grappled and struggled with for so long. And what I really want to emphasize is that relationships aren't held together just by an absence of problems. I'm going to say that again. Relationships aren't held together by an absence of problem or problems. They're held together by alignment, growth, vibrational resonance, and your desire. And as you evolve and as you heal and as your values shift and your needs deepen and your inner truth becomes louder, a relationship that once fit beautifully, that was supposed to be in your life for that amount of time, right, may not match anymore the person you're becoming. Even if there's no conflict, even if there's no betrayal, even if there's no technical crisis. And feeling that misalignment in your relationship, if anyone's listening to this and it resonates, it doesn't mean anyone failed. It doesn't mean anyone was at fault. It simply means the version of you that entered the relationship is not the same person standing where you are today. And now to honor that truth is really hard. And I think that honoring that truth is an act of integrity, not abandonment, not impulsiveness, not selfishness, not sinfulness. It's just a truth. And nothing needs to go wrong in a relationship for it to complete its purpose. And that's really a big one. I just want to emphasize that I learned because, some connections, some relationships are really meant to be catalysts. They're meant to be teachers. They're meant to be there for seasons. Their ending is not failure and certainly isn't a sin, and it's certainly not shameful. And I will share for me, I really took my marriage vows so seriously. Marriage, I think, is one of the most beautiful things in the world. I think that your husband or your wife or your partner in life is absolutely just going to get emotional. One of the greatest gifts God can ever give you. In fact, I think it is the most beautiful gift God will ever give you is a loving partner. And I really grappled between following my own inner voice of knowing I wanted to leave and discover more about myself with the voice that was so deeply committed to the marriage. And I didn't want to go against God. But when I kept praying about it to God, I kept hearing, it's okay, Ahna. Like this, you had always planned it to go this way, not just to help you grow, but also him too. And I just, I would have dreams and hear that, we were both going to be much happier one day and come to understand why it all had to happen. But that it wasn't going against God to leave, and that divorce is actually a part of many, 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 many souls' plans for this life. It's actually a part of God's plan. And, that although marriage vows are deeply important, some marriages aren't meant to last forever. That there can be multiple marriages in a life. And some relationships are supposed to end. And it's all a part of God's divine plan for the evolution of both people involved. And so, yeah, that was a big, big learning for me. And I will say the last learning that comes to mind is how divorce is such a powerful catalyst for self-love. It's often, when I talk about it from a woman's perspective, it forces a woman to confront herself fully. It forces her to confront her needs, her boundaries, her values, her desires. When a relationship ends, the external source of validation or identity shifts. And it really creates this space for internal reflection and self-discovery and a greater love for herself, or I should say for myself. And my own divorce really showed me all of the areas that I was seeking comfort and acceptance outside of myself. And it's shown me all of the areas I was seeking validation outside of myself, where I was seeking love outside of myself. And it also showed me all of the desires I had as a woman that I had suppressed for so long because I didn't want to seem needy. I didn't want to seem like too much. I always wanted to keep the peace. And that's a big deal. And I want to say, I think many of us women, we press down these desires that we have because, I don't know, we just decide it's easier to settle, or we feel like, oh, it's too much, or, oh, if I ask for this, maybe I won't be accepted, or maybe they'll leave, or there's so much to discover about yourself. And divorce was a powerful catalyst for that, for me. And, because I spent a lot of my life in people-pleasing mode, I was buried beneath a ton of my own shadows and just unfortunate things that happened through childhood that I became someone I didn't even know who she was. And I just became the girl everyone needed me to be. Quiet, smiley, never spoke her opinion. I just became who I thought I needed to be loved and accepted in this life. And if I wouldn't have left, I wouldn't be where I am. That's for sure. And when a relationship ends, so do the roles, the routines, the identities, everything you built inside of it ends. And so all of a sudden you're in this scary place where you have to listen to your own voice again. And it's really unfamiliar and like I said, actually quite scary. And it cracks open the parts of you that were quiet, that were repressed, afraid. It invites the healing that probably could, likely couldn't happen while you were still trying to make it work. And yeah, and what I learned is that grief, it stretches your capacity for compassion towards yourself. The loneliness, it invites you into your own companionship. The rebuilding shows you your strength. And the freedom also helps you find your own truth, helps you create a life rooted in truth, not in survival. And I just learned so many beautiful things through my own divorce. And I know it was all a part of the plan. It has shown me so much about myself. And I think we're all here really, truly to remember the love that we carry inside of us. And I sought love from everyone except for myself because I didn't like myself. But I'm learning every day, slowly but surely, and it takes time, how to love myself again. And yeah, and so those are just some of the big learnings I wanted to share and just open up about, because I think that this topic can be kind of like taboo, especially in like the Christian community. There will be people that say, well, you're married, you need to do everything you can to make it work, right? You do everything you can. And while I agree with that, in some circumstances, in other circumstances, you know when it's over. And I just would like to encourage everybody to not to go get a divorce or end their relationship, but like to really get so in tune with yourself and your needs that you find the courage to do what your heart and your soul is calling you to do. And everybody's path is different, but this was mine. And, I'll share on a brighter note, I am in a new relationship and I have never been happier in my life. And I do want to share this because I want every woman to know that yes, a fairy tale love is possible. And we don't just desire that type of love for no reason, right? We love the movies like the Titanic, and okay, I'm speaking for myself, but I know women love romantic comedies. My favorite movies, even since I was like 4 or 5 years old, was like the Titanic and Pearl Harbor and Forrest Gump and like all of these love stories. And every woman, that's like their greatest desire, is to have a beautiful relationship where they can be fully themselves. And we don't just desire it for no reason. Like we like that magic and that romance, and because we know it's possible. And actually it is what God wants for all of us. My own healing led me to this beautiful relationship, and I would have never have been able to, like, I don't even be in this like place if it wasn't for me prioritizing my healing. And it's so fun to be with someone that has the same passions as you, that has the same passion, for the world of healing and for traveling and eating and being goofy and talking about all the weird spiritual stuff, and like, someone else that puts, that wants to talk about God, and just that all of our values align. We have the same vision for life, and it literally feels like we were like made for each other. Like God was like, I'm creating you for you. And I genuinely have never been so in love. And I sincerely adore him. And, no relationship is perfect. And in fact, we must have the really difficult conversations with any of our partners in order to keep opening the heart. And that is what I love about him, is that, we continually grow and push each other and talk about the hard things, which, I wouldn't have even known how to do a few years ago, because there was so much maturing and emotional healing that I needed to do on my end to heal my inner child. And your partner is there to be a mirror. Your partner is like, a healthy relationship really reveals your triggers. It's actually not supposed to be perfect. It reveals your triggers, not to expose your flaws, but to show you, okay, where is his inner child still carrying unmet needs? Where is my inner child still carrying unmet needs? And how do we support each other in those, and in healing those? And in this new partnership, I will tell you, it has brought up all insecurities, my suppressed feelings, all of it. But it's been beautiful because he's held the space for me to be raw, to be messy, to be on the floor, to be bawling my eyes out, to be emotional, to be real, whatever it is. And it has healed me in profound ways, in more ways than I could describe. And it's really interesting, when I step back and I see and I look at like God's plan for my life, and how each person has played such a beautiful and vital role in all of it, for growth, for healing on everyone's end. And I'm forever grateful. And I will always have love for my ex. And that will never leave me. And actually, I'm glad it won't, because he was the first person in my whole life that showed me what it was like to be loved unconditionally. And that love will never leave, to feel, safe and cared for unconditionally. And he was a gift from God that I will never take for granted. And, I really look at every relationship in life as like, especially partnerships, they are gifts from God. And, it's just that love evolves. It changes. People evolve and people change. And I share all of this to hopefully shed some light and wisdom on a topic that is considered shameful. And also a topic that is deeply heartbreaking for anyone going through it, and or if you need to go through it. And, so I hope my raw and vulnerable shares touch your heart in a way that helps you, and that also helps you see divorce and relationship endings as a part of God's, see it from God's lens. I say, try to see things from the sky view, because oftentimes that is far different than what we're seeing here. And, that's even what helped me, like, through so much of my healing, was when I was finally able to feel all the raw, I was able to see, I was able to see the abuse as a child through God's lens. And actually through my own higher self's lens. And again, I believe those things I chose. I chose because it has made me who I am. And actually, I wouldn't have it any other way, because I am strong. And I am confident, and I am going to show other women how to free themselves and show them their innate power too. And that no matter what happens to you in this life, nothing can take the strength of your spirit. You can be kicked down to the ground 1 billion times, and nothing can take the strength of your spirit. So I hope that this podcast just helped you in some way, touched your heart in some way. I hope it invites you to listen to your own heart, to again see things from God's lens, and sometimes even though things aren't accepted by society or friends or family or the church or whatever it may be for you, I hope that you have the courage to follow your own calling and know that when you do follow your heart, when you follow the path of the soul, when you connect with God, when you pray to God, when you lean on Him and lean on Him to make choices, you will always be guided and you will always be cared for and you will always be taken care of. That's it for today. Thank you for listening and thank you for supporting my podcast. And I will come on with more shares in the near future.